Good evening, my dear. I am a peaceful butterfly, and tonight you will fall asleep with me as I gently guide you toward rest. I want to begin by telling you something about where I am right now, because where I am matters deeply to everything I am about to share with you. I am resting. Not resting the way you might imagine, wings spread wide, displayed on a flower. That is the resting of performance, the resting that is still partly about being seen. I am resting in the way I rest when no one is watching. Wings folded together above my back, pressed gently one against the other. My body still. The remarkable machinery of my existence operating at its quietest. My compound eyes processing nothing. My antennae no longer sweeping the air for information. Just resting completely, without reservation. Without the part of the mind that watches the rest and evaluates whether it is restful enough. I am on the underside of a leaf, a large, broad, waxy leaf that curves slightly around me like a hand cupped to protect something small and significant. Above me, the surface of the leaf filters the last of the evening light into something green and soft and without edges. The temperature is dropping. Not uncomfortably, just a gentle, reliable, ancient signal that moves through the air at the end of every day and says to every creature that has learned to listen, this is the hour for stillness. This is the hour for rest. I have listened to this signal every day of my life, and I will tell you, having never once missed a night, having never once fought the signal or tried to override it, that following it is the wisest thing I do. Possibly the wisest thing any living creature does. Before I tell you anything else, I want to share something with you about the nature of my existence that I think will change the way you experience not such tonight, but many nights to come. I am small, genuinely, objectively small. My wingspan, in my particular species, is perhaps the width of your palm. My body weighs less than a paperclip. My entire physical presence in the world could be covered by a single hand without any effort at all. And yet, what I contain, what this small, improbable arrangement of scales and breakthrough contains, is one of the most astonishing biological systems ever produced by 4 billion years of evolution. My wings, those seemingly delicate structures that people sometimes describe as fragile, are not fragile at all. Each wing is composed of thousands of tiny scales, overlapping like tiles on a roof, each one a flattened, hollow structure that serves multiple purposes simultaneously, creating color through structural interference rather than pigment, providing aerodynamic precision, managing temperature, and some species even detecting sound. The color you see when you look at me is not the color of the scales themselves. It is light. Specific wavelengths of light being reflected, refracted, and endless by the microscopic architecture of those scales in ways that engineers are still trying to replicate for applications in solar energy and optical technology. What looks like decoration is actually extraordinary engineering. What looks like beauty is actually function. Function so refined, so precisely calibrated, that to achieves beauty as side effect. I tell you this because I want to offer you the first piece of advice I carry. Look more carefully at the things that seem merely beautiful, the things in your life that seem purely ornamental, the relationships that do not with an obvious practical function, the experiences that seem to moments of precision, the me's things of doing something that the purely functional eye cannot see. Rest is not overcoming. It is not the overlapping of a life well lived. It is the structural engineering that makes every eyes possible, as necessary, as functional as the mechorative architecture of my wings, and capable, like those wings, of producing something deeply beautiful as a natural consequence of doing its job.
Let me tell you something about my history, about what I was before I became the creature who speaks to you now. Because my history contains one of the most important teachings I have to offer. I was a caterpillar. Not long ago, by the measures of the larger world, but in the measures of my own life, which is short and complete and entire unto itself. It was a whole other existence. I crawled. I ate almost constantly with a single-mindedness that I can barely recognize from where I am now. I grew. I shed my skin multiple times as my body outgrew the container it was in. And then, at a moment dictated not by my decision, but by something deeper than decision, something biological and inevitable and precisely timed, I began to build my chrysalis. And here is the thing about the chrysalis that most people do not know. The thing that changes the story entirely. Inside the chrysalis, I did not simply rearrange. I did not modify or adjust or improve. I dissolved, almost completely. The organized structures of the caterpillar, the muscles, the organs, many of the systems, were broken down by enzymes into a largely undifferentiated biological soup. For a period, inside the chrysalis, there was no caterpillar. There was not yet a butterfly. There was something that was neither, something in between. Something that could not be identified as either what had been or what would come. And from that dissolution, from that period of being nothing recognizable, I emerged. I share this because I think it contains the most important truth I know about transformation. That genuine change, the kind that produces something genuinely different rather than merely modified, requires a period of dissolution. A period of not knowing what you are. A period of being in the space between what you were and what you will become. And sleep is, every night, a smaller version of this. The dissolution of the waking self, the self that has a name and a role and a set of responsibilities and a list of things it has not yet finished, into something quieter and less defined. Something that is resting in the in-between space. Something that is neither fully the person who went to sleep, nor yet the person who will wake. This dissolution is not a loss. It is the condition of renewal. Every morning is, in some small way, an emergence from the chrysalis, a return to the surface as something slightly different, rebuilt, reorganized, carrying within it the integrated experience of all the days before, in a form that is marginally more capable, more complete. You are in the chrysalis right now. Allow the dissolution. Trust the in-between. Know that what emerges tomorrow will be worth the letting go of tonight. I want to tell you about something that I experience every day that humans almost never experience. Something that I think would change the way you move through the world if you could feel it even once. I experience the world primarily through chemical information. My antennae are extraordinarily sensitive chemical receptors, able to detect specific molecules in concentrations of a few parts per billion. A single molecule of the right compound, carried on the air from a flower that is hundreds of meters away, is enough to turn me toward it, to begin the navigation towards something that my entire biology is oriented to receive. I also taste with my feet, literally. The sensory organs on my feet are so sensitive that the moment I land on a surface, I am already processing chemical information about what that surface contains. Whether the leaf is suitable for laying eggs, whether the flower has the nectar I need, whether this is a safe place to rest. This means that for me, every landing is an act of full sensory engagement. Every surface I touch is immediately, intimately known. I cannot land on something and be absent from it. I cannot be somewhere and not be fully there. And this is the teaching I want to draw from this. The quality of your presence in any experience, including the experience of lying in bed preparing for sleep, determines the quality of what you receive from it. The person who lies down while mentally elsewhere, while planning tomorrow, reviewing today, running through the things that went wrong and the things that must be fixed, is not actually present in their bed. They are present in a mental construction that has very little to do with the actual physical sensory reality of the moment. And the actual physical sensory reality of this moment, this specific moment right now where you are, is remarkable. The warmth of the surface beneath you, the particular weight of what covers you, the precise temperature of the air on your face, the sound of your own breathing, which is different from any other breathing that has ever existed or ever will exist. These are real things, present things, things that are actually here right now, available to you with a fullness that no mental construction can match. Land here. Taste this moment with everything you have. Be as present in your bed right now as I am in every surface I touch. There is something I do every morning that I want to share with you. Something that happens in the first moments after my rest has ended, because it contains a teaching about how to begin that I think is genuinely valuable. When I emerge from sleep, when the light first reaches me and my body begins to register that the conditions for activity have returned, I do not immediately move. I stay still. I allow the temperature of the air to register fully before I respond to it. I allow the light to reach the photoreceptors in my compound eyes and fully inform my biology before I make any decisions about where to go. I allow my wings to warm, because a butterfly whose wings are cold cannot fly well, and a butterfly that flies before it is ready wastes energy and increases risk. This morning stillness, this deliberate pause between rest and activity, is not laziness, it is intelligence. I wait until I am genuinely ready before I begin. And this is advice I want to offer you about the mornings that follow good sleep. Do not rush the transition. The moments between waking and full engagement, the warm, slow, half-conscious time in which you are already awake, but not yet moving. These are not moments to be accelerated past. They are moments to inhabit. Your brain in those moments is doing something scientifically interesting. It is consolidating the final stages of the night's memory processing, allowing the insights and integrations of sleep to complete their journey into full accessibility. The ideas that arrive in those first waking moments, the clarity, the solutions, the sudden understandings, are the gifts of the night, arriving just as you return to consciousness. Rushing past them, immediately checking the phone, immediately moving into the day's demands, is like leaving a gift on the doorstep without pausing to receive it. The morning stillness is when the night delivers what it has spent hours preparing. Stay still long enough to receive it. Let your wings warm before you fly. I want to speak to you now about migration, about the extraordinary journey that some of my kind undertake each year, because it contains a teaching about endurance and rest that I consider among the most remarkable in all of nature. Monarch butterfly, a cousin of mine in the broader family of life, migrates each autumn from as far north as Canada to overwintering grounds in central Mexico, a distance of up to 4,000 kilometers, completed by a creature whose wingspan is no larger than an outstretched hand. And what makes this more remarkable still, no individual monarch completes the journey twice. The monarchs that arrive in Mexico in November are not the monarchs that left Mexico the previous spring. Several generations separate them. They are navigating to a place they have never been, guided by a combination of the sun's position, the Earth's magnetic field, and something in their biology that encodes the direction of home before they have ever needed to find it. But what I want to tell you about migration is not the navigation. It is the resting. Monarchs do not fly continuously. They cannot. The distance is too great, the energy requirements too high. Instead, they rest. Every night, in the same trees along the flyway, in numbers that can reach millions, clustering together for warmth, hanging from the branches in such density that the trees appear to be in bloom. The rest is not a concession to weakness. It is the strategy. The resting is how the impossible journey is made possible. By breaking 4,000 kilometers into daily segments that any individual butterfly can manage. Flight, rest, flight, rest, flight, rest. The impossible becomes achievable. And this is one of the most powerful pieces of advice I carry for anyone who faces something that feels too large, a life challenge that seems too significant, a journey that seems too long, a transformation that seems too difficult. Break it into the daily segment, and then rest properly, completely, without guilt about the distance remaining. The monarch does not lie in its tree at night, calculating how far it still has to go and feeling inadequate about the distance. It rests completely, specifically, without reservation, because tomorrow it will fly again. And flying requires that the rest tonight be genuine. Tonight is a resting night. Whatever your journey is, whatever the 4,000 kilometers of your life currently looks like, tonight is the tree. Tonight is the clustering with warmth. Tonight is the genuine, unworried, necessary rest that makes tomorrow's flight possible. And the distance remaining is not your business tonight. The distance remaining is tomorrow's concern. Tonight belongs entirely to the rest. I want to tell you something about what I see, about the extraordinary visual system I carry, because it contains a teaching about perspective that I find genuinely useful. My eyes are compound eyes, each one composed of thousands of individual lenses, each lens pointing in a slightly different direction, each one sending its own image to my brain to be assembled into a composite picture of the world around me. I see in nearly 360 degrees simultaneously. I see ultraviolet light that is invisible to you. I perceive colors in flowers that your eyes cannot detect, patterns that guide me to nectar as precisely as signage guides you through a building. And yet, here is what is interesting. I see movement with extraordinary precision, while stationary objects are sometimes less distinct. My visual system is calibrated primarily for detecting change, for sensing the approach of a threat, for navigating through a dynamic environment. It is a system designed for flight, not for contemplation. And this is why rest, genuine stillness, changes what I can perceive. When I am flying, the world is primarily movement and threat and navigation. When I am still, I can perceive things that the motion of flight makes invisible. The quality of the light, the texture of the surface beneath me, the subtle chemical information drifting on the air. Stillness reveals what movement conceals. And this is a teaching I want to offer you about your own perception. The things you most need to understand about your life are often not visible when you are moving through it at full speed. The patterns only become clear from stillness. The connections between events that seemed unrelated, the threads running through the story of your days. These become visible only when the movement stops long enough for the eyes to adjust to what is actually there. Sleep provides this stillness, not just for the body, but for the perceiving mind. The mind that has rested can see what the rushing mind cannot. It can detect the pattern in the apparently random. It can notice the connection between things that the tired, distracted, overwhelmed mind would never have the space to observe. Rest is not a pause from understanding your life. It is often the condition in which your life finally becomes understandable. Here is something about my flight that I think will offer you something practical. Something that applies not just to sleep, but to the way you move through everything you face. My flight pattern is irregular. Not random, irregular. There is a difference. Random would mean no pattern. Irregular means the pattern is more complex than simple, straight-line prediction. I flutter. I drift. I sometimes appear to lose altitude, only to catch a thermal and rise beyond where I started. I circle. I double back. From the outside, to a creature watching me, my flight can look inefficient, like I am not going anywhere directly, like I am not certain of my destination. But this is a misreading of what I am doing. My irregular flight is actually extraordinarily sophisticated navigation. It is how I sample the air for chemical information, how I test the thermals for lift, how I remain unpredictable to predators while still making genuine progress toward my destination. The apparent inefficiency is the strategy. The circling is the information gathering. The doubling back is the correction. The drift is the thermal finding that makes the effortful beating less necessary. And the teaching I want to draw from this: the path of your life does not need to be straight to be purposeful. The circling is not failure. The doubling back is not weakness. The periods of apparent drift, when you are not making visible progress toward any particular goal, may be the periods of most important navigation. Gathering information, testing possibilities, finding the thermals that will carry you further than any amount of effortful beating could. Tonight is a period of drift, of allowing the current to carry you rather than fighting toward a direction, of trusting that the thermal is there, that the support will come, that the morning will bring what the effortful night could not. Let yourself drift. This is not giving up. This is flying as I fly, with complete trust in the air that holds me without my asking it to. I want to share something about the flowers I visit, about the relationship between me and the flowers, because it contains a teaching about relationships generally that I find myself returning to often. My relationship with flowers is one of the most studied examples of mutualism in the natural world. The relationship in which two species each benefit from the other in ways that neither could achieve alone. I need the nectar for energy. The flower needs me to carry its pollen. But here is what I find interesting about this. Neither of us is thinking about the other's needs. I am not visiting the flower to help it reproduce. I am visiting it for the nectar. And the flower is not producing nectar out of generosity. It is producing nectar to attract me, so that my visit serves its reproductive needs. The mutualism is not the result of altruism. It is the result of both organisms fully, honestly pursuing their own genuine needs in an environment where those needs happen to be complementary. And this is a teaching about relationships that I think is more useful than the usual advice about selflessness and sacrifice. The best relationships are not the ones where each party is constantly sacrificing their own needs in service of the others. They are the ones where each party is honestly, clearly, genuinely pursuing what they actually need, and where those needs happen to align in ways that allow both to flourish. The relationship that requires constant sacrifice is a relationship in which the needs are not actually complementary. The relationship in which both people genuinely thrive is the one where genuine needs are genuinely met, not performed, not suppressed, but honestly acknowledged and honestly pursued. And for tonight, for this moment, your genuine need is rest. Not the performance of rest, not the attempt to appear relaxed while remaining vigilant, not the lying still while the mind continues its work, but the genuine, honest, acknowledged need for sleep, honored because it is real, not because it has been earned or justified or made acceptable by sufficient effort. Let me tell you now about something that I carry in my biology that most people never consider. Something that I find deeply moving every time I think about it. I was built by evolution across millions of years to be beautiful. Not beautiful in the human sense of aesthetic preference, though I am told I am often considered beautiful in that sense too, but you're functionally beautiful, shaped by selection pressure to look like the things that predators avoid. The patterns on my wings, the eye spots that resemble the eyes of larger creatures, the warning colors that signal toxicity to birds, the camouflage that makes me invisible against bark or leaf. All of this is communication. My beauty is a language that says, to those who read it, leave me alone. I am more than I appear. I am not worth the trouble. And I want to offer you this as advice about your own expression, your own way of being in the world. The way you present yourself communicates something, whether you intend it to or not. Not just what you say or wear or choose, but the quality of your attention, the quality of your stillness, the quality of your genuine rest. These communicate something about who you are and what you value. The person who rests genuinely, who treats their own restoration as important, who does not perform exhaustion as proof of worth, this person communicates by their very way of being that they understand something important about value, that they have not confused busyness with meaning, that they know the difference between productive effort and exhausting performance, that they have made the genuinely countercultural choice to treat their own well-being as foundational rather than optional. This is the pattern on the wing. This is the beauty that serves a function. This is the way of being that says to the world, clearly, quietly, without needing to announce it, I know what matters, and I am living accordingly. I want to tell you something about warmth, about my relationship with temperature, that I find particularly relevant to the experience of settling into sleep. I am ectothermic, which means I cannot generate my own body heat. I depend on external sources of warmth to maintain the temperature my flight muscles need to function. On cool mornings, I spread my wings wide and orient them toward the sun, maximizing the surface area exposed to solar radiation, absorbing heat as efficiently as possible, waiting with complete patience for the temperature in my flight muscles to reach the threshold that allows flight. I cannot rush this process. There is no way to will my muscles warm. There is no technique for accelerating the absorption of heat. I can only orient correctly, turn toward the available warmth, and wait. And this waiting, this patient, open, correctly oriented waiting, is not passive. It is work. The work of being precisely positioned to receive what is already coming toward me. Sleep is like this. You cannot force sleep, just as I cannot force warmth into my muscles. But you can orient correctly. Create the conditions. Lie still. Release the tension that is the equivalent of turning away from the sun, and wait with the patient openness of a creature that trusts the warmth to come. The warmth of sleep, the genuine, deep, restorative warmth of genuine rest, is already on its way to you. Your body is already producing the melatonin. Your core temperature is already dropping. The neural pathways that lead into sleep are already widening, deepening, becoming more available. You do not need to make this happen. You only need to orient correctly, to be still, to be warm, to be genuinely open, and allow what is already moving toward you to arrive. Here is something I want to offer you about the experience of being small in a large world. Because I am very small in a very large world, and I have thought about this considerably. From my perspective, from the inches above the ground that I inhabit as my primary altitude, the world is enormous. A single garden is a territory of vast complexity. A forest is essentially infinite. The sky above me is without boundary in any practical sense. And yet, I am not overwhelmed by this vastness. Not because I fail to perceive it. My senses register more of the world's complexity than most creatures. But because I do not hold myself responsible for all of it. I am responsible for this flower, this leaf, this thermal, this moment's navigation, the immediate, present, specific territory that my small body can genuinely engage with. The rest of the world, the vast, complex, enormously consequential rest of the world, continues without my management. And this is not a problem. This is simply the truth. And this is advice I want to offer you about the scope of your responsibility, about the territory you actually have the ability to manage. It is smaller than the anxiety suggests. Not in a diminishing way, but in a liberating way. The world that you are responsible for tonight is this bed, this breath, this body, the vast territory of everything else, the people who are not here, the problems that belong to other hours, the future that has not yet arrived. continues without your nighttime management, because it was always going to. Because your nighttime vigilance over the vast territory was never actually protective. It was only exhausting. Be small tonight, in the best sense. Inhabit only this immediate, present, warm, specific place, and let the vastness continue without you until morning brings you back to the appropriate territory of your daytime concern. As we move into the deepest part of this evening together, I want to offer you something that I consider the most important teaching I carry. The thing that, if I could give you only one piece of wisdom from all the experience of my short, complete, remarkable life, this would be it. I live for weeks. Some species of butterfly live for less, a matter of days. Some species live for several months. But in the larger scheme of things, my time is brief. And what I have discovered from living briefly is something that I think creatures who live longer sometimes have more difficulty accessing: the profound, unmediated, immediate value of this moment. Not this moment as part of a trajectory towards something else. Not this moment as a point on the way to a destination, but this moment in itself as the destination. I do not have enough time to waste any of it waiting for the right moment to be fully present. Every moment is the right moment. Every flower is worth the full attention. Every thermal is worth genuine gratitude. Every resting place is worth the complete inhabiting, wings folded, body still, completely here. And the rest, the genuine, complete, fully inhabited rest, is as valuable as the flight. Not more valuable, not less, the same. Because the flight is only possible because of the rest, and the rest is given meaning by the flight. They are not opposites. They are two aspects of the same complete life. Tonight's rest is not the absence of your life. It is part of your life, one of its most essential, most generative, most remarkable parts. Inhabit it with the same fullness you would want to inhabit the best moments, because it is a best moment. This quiet, this warmth, this body at rest, this mind growing softer, this gradual, willing, beautiful descent into the place where everything is restored. I am settling now onto my leaf. The wings are folding, not dramatically, not with any ceremony, just the natural, quiet, inevitable folding that happens every evening. The wings closing together the way hands close together when there is no longer anything to do with them. The temperature has found its evening level. The light has softened to the quality that says, "This is the signal." This is the moment. This is when the creature that I am does what it was made to do in these hours. Let me tell you something about myself that almost no one knows. Something that was discovered only recently by scientists studying my kind, and that I think will change the way you think about memory, about learning, and about what is actually possible in the space of a single life. I remember things from before I was a butterfly. Not vaguely, not approximately, with genuine, testable, measurable precision. Researchers at Georgetown University trained caterpillars to avoid a specific smell, a smell associated with a mild shock. The caterpillars learned. They built an aversion, a genuine behavioral neurological aversion to that particular stimulus. Then the caterpillars entered the chrysalis. Then they dissolved, as I described, almost completely into the undifferentiated biological soup of transformation. And when the butterflies emerged, when I emerged in my winged form, the memory was still there. The butterflies avoided the smell. The learning had survived the dissolution. The experience of the caterpillar had been carried through complete transformation into the new creature on the other side. Think about what this means. Not just for me, but for you. Everything you have learned, every experience that has shaped you, every difficulty you have moved through, every moment of genuine understanding, these are not lost in your transformations. They survive. They carry forward through the dissolutions, through the changes, through the periods when you barely recognize yourself, into whoever you are becoming. The wisdom is not lost when the form changes. The learning does not dissolve when the life changes. It persists, encoded in something deeper than the conscious memory, available to the new version of you, as surely as my aversion to that smell was available to me when I emerged. And sleep is one of the primary mechanisms by which this carrying forward happens. The consolidation of memory during sleep, the process by which experiences are moved from temporary storage into permanent integration, is, in a sense, your nightly chrysalis. The night takes what happened today and encodes it into who you are, ensuring that tomorrow's version of you carries forward what today's version learned. You cannot shortcut this process. You cannot accelerate it. You cannot achieve in waking hours what sleep achieves in these quiet ones. The dissolution must happen. The carrying forward happens only in the chrysalis. And the chrysalis is this stillness, this rest, this complete and willing surrender to the process that knows more than you do about how to build the next version of yourself. something else I want to tell you. Something about the sense I possess that you do not, and that I think reveals something important about how to navigate your life. I have a magnetic sense. Tiny magnetite crystals embedded in my body, biological compasses, allow me to detect the Earth's magnetic field and use it as one of my navigational references. I always know where north is, not as a thought, not as a conscious decision, but as a felt sense, an orientation that is available to me at every moment, in every condition, regardless of whether I can see the sun or recognize the landmarks. Even when I'm lost, even when the weather has confused my other senses, when I am in unfamiliar territory, when nothing around me looks like what I expected, the magnetic sense continues. North is still north. The orientation is still available. And this is the teaching I want to offer you. You have your own magnetic sense. Not literal, not the magnetite crystals, but the equivalent, the internal orientation toward what matters to you, toward what is genuinely true for you, toward the values and commitments and genuine preferences that constitute your inner north. This sense is always there, but it is most accessible in stillness, in the quiet, in the moments when the noise of activity and expectation and performance has settled. You can feel it. The quiet pull toward what actually matters. The gentle, persistent orientation toward what is genuinely true for you, beneath all the things you have been told should matter, beneath all the urgencies that crowd the waking hours. Sleep restores access to this sense. The person who has rested genuinely, who has given the quiet the space it needs, often wakes with a clarity about their own direction that the exhausted, overstimulated mind cannot access. Not because the sleep created the clarity, but because the rest removed the noise that was preventing the magnetic sense from being felt. Tonight, allow the noise to settle. Allow the overstimulation to drain away. Allow the quiet to do what the quiet does, which is to restore your access to your own inner north. And when you wake, pay attention to the first felt sense of direction, the quiet, undramatic, completely reliable orientation that arrives before the day's urgencies have had a chance to crowd it out. That is your compass. That is the magnetic sense. That is the part of you that always knows where north is. And the rest of tonight is what allows you to hear it. I want to tell you something about the extraordinary sensitivity of my antennae. The chemical receptors that I described earlier. Because there is a teaching embedded in this sensitivity that I think is one of the most practically useful things I carry. My antennae are not just sensitive, they are specifically sensitive, tuned to detect the exact compounds that are relevant to my survival and reproduction, while filtering out the overwhelming background of everything else that is chemically present in the air. air I fly through contains millions of chemical compounds. If I attempted to process all of them equally, to give equal attention to everything, I would be overwhelmed immediately. The signal would be lost in the noise. But my antennae are not designed for equal attention. They are designed for specific attention, for the detection of what matters, with the efficient filtering out of what does not. This is a teaching about attention that I consider essential. The human mind, like my antennae, is not designed for equal attention to everything. It is designed for specific, prioritized, selective attention, for the capacity to distinguish signal from noise, important from merely present, worth attending to from merely available. But your culture asks you to give equal attention to everything. The phone demands it. The news demands it. The constant availability of information demands it. And the result, as any student of attention would predict, is that the signal is lost in the noise. The genuinely important things compete with the merely urgent things, and the merely interesting things, and the merely available things. And the antenna becomes degraded, less able to detect what it was designed to detect. Sleep restores the antenna. Genuine rest, the complete withdrawal from stimulation, allows the attentional system to reset, to recalibrate, to return to its designed sensitivity for the things that actually matter. The person who sleeps well and wakes genuinely rested does not experience the day's information as an undifferentiated, overwhelming flood. They experience it with the specificity of the well-calibrated antenna, able to detect what matters, able to filter what does not, able to navigate the complexity of their day with the precision of a creature whose sense organs are functioning as they were designed to function. This is what genuine rest restores. Not your energy, not just mood, but the precision of attention, the most fundamental capacity you have for engaging with your life effectively. Protect this capacity. Honor it tonight by giving the antenna the complete withdrawal from stimulation that allows it to recalibrate. Switch off the inputs, settle into the quiet, and let the sensitivity restore itself, the way mine restores itself every night, on the underside of a leaf, in the complete and nourishing quiet of a world that is resting alongside me. Here is something about proboscis, the long coiled tube I use to drink nectar, that contains a teaching about patience and timing that I find more useful the more I think about it. My proboscis is kept coiled beneath my head when I am not feeding, like a watch spring wound tight, ready but not deployed. I do not extend it until I have actually landed on a flower. Not while I am approaching, not while I am deciding. Only when I have landed when the commitment has been made, when the chemistry of the flower has been confirmed by the sensors in my feet. Only then does the proboscis uncoil. I do not extend myself toward things before I have genuinely arrived. I do not begin feeding from a distance. I do not consume what I have not yet reached. And this is advice I want to offer you about the relationship between anticipation and exhaustion. The habit of consuming tomorrow's energy today, of pre-worrying, pre-planning, pre-solving, is one of the most reliable sources of unnecessary fatigue. The problem that has not yet arrived does not require your current resources. The conversation you are rehearsing has not yet happened and may never happen exactly as you rehearse it. The future you are anticipating is a construction of the present mind, not the actual future, which will arrive with its own conditions and which will be met when it arrives by a version of you that has the specific resources that that moment will provide. Keep the proboscis coiled. Do not begin feeding from a flower you have not yet reached. Do not expend tonight's resources on tomorrow's problems. Tomorrow is a different flower. Tonight is this one. And this one requires only your presence, your stillness, your willingness to be exactly here, without the coil extended toward anywhere else. There is one more remarkable thing about my nature that I want to share before the words grow quieter. Something about the scales on my wings that I find deeply instructive about resilience and recovery. My wings are covered in scales, thousands of them, overlapping precisely, each one contributing to color, flight, and protection. And these scales can be lost. When a predator grabs at a wing, or when I brush against a surface too roughly, scales come off. You may have seen this, the powdery residue left on a finger that has touched a butterfly wing. That is scales, irreplaceable scales, because unlike some animals, I cannot regrow what I have lost. And yet, a butterfly that has lost scales can still fly. The flight may be slightly less efficient. The coloration may be slightly altered. But the capacity for flight, the fundamental ability to move through the world, to find what I need, to do what I was made to do, this remains. The loss changes the wing, but it does not define the butterfly. And this is perhaps the most personal advice I can offer you. The advice that comes not from my biology's successes, but from its managed losses. The things you have lost, the scales that have been taken, the capacities that have been diminished, the versions of yourself that did not survive whatever you have been through. These losses do not define you. They change you. They alter the pattern. They leave a residue in the places you were touched. But they do not remove the capacity for flight. The fundamental ability to move through your life, to find what nourishes you, to contribute what only you can contribute, to be what you were made to be, this remains. And every night of genuine sleep, every night of the deep, restorative, completely uncritical restoration that the chrysalis of sleep provides, is a night in which the remaining scales are strengthened and protected. A night in which the flight capacity is restored. A night in which tomorrow's butterfly is given everything it needs to fly, with whatever wings it currently has. Scaled or unscaled, perfect or imperfect, exactly as it is. You will fly tomorrow with whatever wings this life has given you, with whatever scales remain. And tonight, this quiet, generous, completely trustworthy night is protecting what you have, restoring what can be restored, preparing the creature that you are for the flight that tomorrow will ask of it. There is one final thing I want to tell you. Something about the sound that I make, or rather, the sound that I do not make. I am almost completely silent. My wings move the air, that soft, barely audible whisper that you can hear only if you are very still and very close. But I generate no call, no song, no announcement of my presence. I exist without insisting on being heard. I move through the world without demanding acknowledgement. I do what I do, completely, fully, generously, without requiring that anyone notice or confirm or validate it. And this too is advice. The quiet life, the life that does its work without announcement, that gives its gifts without requiring recognition, that moves through the world contributing without insisting that the contribution be noticed, is not a lesser life. It is, in some ways, the fullest life. The life that is doing what it was made to do with such completeness that it does not need external confirmation to know that what it is doing matters. Tonight, rest without announcing it, without performing it, without the part that monitors whether you are resting correctly. The part that is, in its own way, asking to be heard, to be confirmed, to be validated. Just rest, as silently and as completely as I rest on my leaf, without a sound, without a witness, with nothing required from the experience except the experience itself. This warmth, this stillness, this breath, this body at rest in the middle of its one remarkable life. I rest completely, without reservation, without the part of the mind that monitors the rest. And you, lying in your warmth, in the particular and unrepeatable shelter of this evening, are doing the same. The breathing has slowed. The thoughts have become less urgent, less like instructions, and more like weather, moving through without requiring your response. The body is remembering what it has always known, that the surface beneath it is trustworthy, that the warmth around it is genuine, that nothing in this moment requires anything other than the simple, complete, biological act of being at rest. I am here with you, on my leaf, in my quiet, fully present in this moment of rest, which is, as I have said, as full and as valuable as any moment of flight. Tomorrow I will fly again, and so will you, with wings that have been restored by the night, with a body that the hours of genuine rest have rebuilt and renewed in ways that no amount of continued effort could have produced. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow belongs to the light. Tonight belongs to this, to the folded wings, to the still body, to the quiet that is not empty but full, full of the invisible work of restoration, full of the body's faithful, tireless, entirely trustworthy maintenance of the life you are living. Fall asleep with the feeling that transformation is already underway inside you, that the rest you are entering is as full and as valuable as any flight, and that tomorrow you will wake with wings that are warm and ready for whatever the light brings.